version and maybe at a minimum, let's say like what year you are in school and what your school is and where you physically are, since that may be relevant during our time together. Um, and and then we'll talk some more about how sort of our vision for what we're going to do together this summer and what we want to get out of it. For myself, I'll give a very quick introduction. My name is Betsy Noth. I have a doctorate in environmental health from UC Berkeley. I am a researcher at UC Berkeley, and I am also a senior industrial hygienist with Cal OSHA, California Occupational Health and Safety, which is new for me in this last year. And I am now writing regulations to protect workers, which is really interesting and different and rewarding. And I'm working, some of you may know Mike Wilson from past years, and he is now my major colleague and a lot of fun to work with. But I am here not in either of those capacities today. I'm just here. Those are sort of my backgrounds. Um, and so I think that's probably enough excitement about me. I am looking forward to extending what we've done, and I'm super proud of what we've done over the last couple of years and before that. But like, I think there's nobody left from before that. Maybe Richard, but I am looking forward to what we're going to do these next 6 weeks and beyond. So why don't we just go? So I think that means either Hayun, you're first, or Alice. I'm not sure how you guys want to do it.
Hi, my name's Han, and um, I go to college in Appleton, Wisconsin. It's called Lawrence University, and I'm currently a film and French major. And I'm also working as like admin at Ignite, so I'll kind of be managing like recording sessions and like getting the homework uploaded, stuff like that, recordings and stuff, and also participating in research. And Marie, you're next.
Oh wait, what year are you in university?
I'm a rising junior.
Hi, I'm a senior at Cornell. I'm studying information sciences. Information sciences is kind of like similar to data science, but it's kind of a mix of multiple majors, is just how you can think of it. Alice, you're next.
Hi, my name is Alice, and I'm currently heading on to ninth grade. And I go to international school on Jeju Island from South Korea. And I'm currently enjoying my summer vacation, so I'm really happy to spend my time on doing some research with you guys. So I'm really excited to do all of those really interesting stuff.
Hi, my name is Ryan. Graduated from the College of William Mary this past May. I majored in kinesiology, and I'm preparing to apply to PT school soon.
You graduated already?
Yeah,
Wow, time flies.
it's
Congratulations.
been a while, yeah. And I'm really excited to work with you again and get some meaningful research experience.
Hello, I'm Jen. I've also graduated from Emory for data science. I'm here to help out data related things for the research and others.
Equally crazy. Congrats to you too.
Thank you. I think next is Sophia on mine.
Hi, my name is Sophia. I'm a rising sophomore at NYU and I'm majoring in math. So it's like I'm kind of hoping to like wake up way earlier than I normally do and like have like a productive day in general.
Sophia, you're in Korea?
I'm in Korea at this
Yeah,
moment.
that's okay. That's what I thought. Thank you for getting up super early.
Hi everyone. I'm Haley. I've been working with Dr. Noth for a couple of years now. I graduated from Emory recently. Also, I majored in psychology, and I'm currently preparing to apply to medical school next year. But yeah, I'm excited to work with you guys. I will not be as active until September just because I'm studying for my MCAT, but I'll be around here and there.
Congrats to you too.
Thank you.
I'm Matthew. I'm a rising junior at Stony Brook University in New York. I'm double majoring in biology and Spanish. I'm becoming a doctor. And I really look forward to working with you guys.
I worked at SUNY Stony Brook for 6 months after my master's degree. No, exactly. Are you there now?
No, I'm at home right now.
All right. Where's home?
It's
East
in
Coast?
it's like 40 minutes away from Stony.
Okay. I just like to know where everybody is, so if they're falling asleep, then I know that it's for one reason or the other, because I'm in California, which you guys probably assumed, but like I'm right in between Sophia and then you guys on East Coast time. Cool. Well, welcome.
Currently a junior in high school. Uh, I'm right now. I mean, my school is like a major system, and so technically, I'm like an environmental science major. But I'm sort of interested, um, like regarding for college, I'm pretty interested in like public health, and then later down the line, maybe get into like something along the lines of like epidemiology. But right now, it's sort of it might change or not. I'm not entirely sure.
Hi, I'm Richard. I'm a rising junior also from NYU. I'm majoring in media studies right now, and I'm staying in Korea as well. And I'm excited to work with all of you.
Yeah, so everybody knows me, the Daisy. I'm in DC. It's 15 minutes away, DC, Virginia, actually. Yeah,
Lots
community.
of diverse locations and a lot of um, it's good that a lot of you are in the East Coast. That makes it easier for collaboration. And we're putting together a people to come and speak, give some lectures, not maybe like the ones that are more more of like research updates and talking about things generally less on the like instruction to do a specific thing because you guys are on average more advanced, and so it sort of is like a just sort of getting some more information like out there, like like Willie, like you said, like maybe you want to do public health, maybe you don't, like so like people can you'll get some exposure to what that means to some people. This week actually, tomorrow, Dr. Costello is going to talk to you guys about epidemiology, which will be fun. And I know some of you have heard her talk before, and so you know that she's great, and it doesn't matter that you've heard her talk before. And then she's gonna do 1 hour tomorrow and then 2 hours on Thursday. So you'll get like a good kickoff with a bunch of stuff about epidemiology. So that is pretty cool. And Sadie and I are very close, so I'm also excited that she's available. Summer's hard. People are on vacation at different times, and so you can't always get people. So she's going to speak to you guys. I've got a couple people, like I know that some of you have heard Dr. Layla Kwong speak before about her work, and I'm trying to figure out if she's away or what's going on, and get her on the schedule. One of her graduated doctoral students who I worked with on her Bangladesh work in chicken markets is going to talk to you guys about his work. And then also the paper that you read today, and not read, but the paper on the list to discuss a bit today about identifying toxic consumer products. Dr. Meg Schwarzman is the senior author on that, and she's going to talk to you guys next week. She and her husband, Dr. Mike Wilson, are away this week. So we're going to put some things together just so that you get a nice experience of sort of the state of the art of what's going on in public health research right now. And because I'm moving more towards regulations and sort of figuring out how to actually actively protect workers, you'll get probably a little more of that flavor than before, but it'll be mostly, sort of research updates and some research. And so hopefully that will be interesting and relevant. I think before Haley and Jin do their part today, I'll just say a little bit that the plan for us is twofold on the research part. One is that last year we put together, and many of you worked on our abstract that went into APHA in 2024, and Haley went to Minneapolis, right? Was in Minneapolis? Was in Minnesota? Yeah, Minneapolis. Where else? And had a great time presenting the work on youth labor and injury and labor laws. And so we expanded on that. And when I say we, I mean really they expanded on it and put in a bunch more work to look at how they could explore that data further with feedback that she got at the conference, but also just like brainstorming about where we wanted to go with it. And so there's a 2025 APHA research, which you guys have probably seen the abstract in the link. And so we want to like work on sort of fleshing that out so that Jin is going to go and give a poster presentation, which is also awesome because she'll get to talk to people. It's similar to Haley's, but a different sort of physical product to bring with her. And so that will be really good. And then so that's one piece of the research we're going to work on, which is developing that data set and making sure that we've sort of done what we can with data available. And then we sort of are interested in going in a different direction because it's hard to go down this path continuously of the Bureau of Labor Statistics data and injury and different aspects because the data don't link everything together, which we've all banged our head against the wall. And maybe Marie, you will have some new ideas. But using publicly available data means that it's hard to get all of the depth that you want. And so with Bureau of Labor Statistics, you can get race and age and occupation and location of injury, or you could get age, gender. You know, it's just like you can't get all of the modes that you want to get. And it's to protect people's anonymity, maybe really to protect corporations. I'm not sure who's being protected in that. That would be an interesting conversation as well. So we're going to go in a different direction, which is that in 2023, this paper that we will briefly discuss later put out, which did work similar to what we've done, which is took two publicly available data sets on hazards and merged them together to prioritize which hazards were the worst. So it was a data set of the Prop 65 carcinogens and developmental toxicants and reproductive toxicants that's been developed in California. And then on the other hand, the California Air Resources Board list of emissions of toxic chemicals. And so putting those two together to understand what the highest emissions are of toxic chemicals and making a list of like which of those chemicals should be prioritized when trying to protect either workers, consumers, or the general population in all scenarios. And so the piece that's missing a bit from that is when you want to make a regulation, you want it to be important, both protecting from a damaging compound, but also protecting the most people you can. So if you had two equally hazardous compounds and one was used in a population of 4 workers and the other was used in a population of 100 workers, it'd be more urgent to write a regulation protecting the 100 workers than the 4. Or if you're not thinking about writing regulations and you were instead going to do a startup, like it would be better for you to target the larger population because there would be more of a application for your product. So there's lots of different ways to think about why you might want to prioritize, you know, with worker populations or even consumer populations. And so what we're going to do as our main project is decide on populations to look at and make a new priority of what would be the highest priority of these. So taking Meg's list, Dr. Schwarzman paper, and adding at least another dimension, if not more than one dimension to that. And that will take doing some research about population data sizes and understanding how people use different toxicants. And I think it will be very rewarding, and you can look at it in a lot of different directions, since I know you guys have a lot of different interests. You're not all interested in one, outcome, health outcome, or reality. And there may be, some subtle but very meaningful differences. I'm just thinking of the difference between Ryan, you're interested, and you've always been interested, so you made it through college still being interested in PT, and Haley, for you going into, applying for medical school, like those are two different health outcomes, and you might be interested in protecting people from, disability, or which would be more towards the PT end, or you might be interested in protecting them from lifelong chronic illness, which might be more on the medical end. So there's like a lot of different ways to think about what you would prioritize and why. And so I think that will make for good conversation, and sort of an outcome that's interesting that we'll be able to develop into an abstract and hopefully a paper. So, and Meg, like I said, we'll come and talk to you guys about that. And I think probably Mike will come and talk as well, sort of about his perspective on that. Um, and there'll be some more, and I'll just update the schedule as we go along. And meanwhile, we'll do meetings together, like you guys and me, sort of just research meetings, at least twice a week of varying lengths depending on what's needed during which phases of the research. Okay. So I think what would be good now would be if Haley, you and Jin would share sort of, I guess maybe Haley first with the 2024 stuff and how that went and what happened at the conference and all of that, whatever you think is relevant to share. And then Jin, the same for you, but 2025. And then um, and people can ask questions if they're confused, etc.
Sure. Yeah, I can share my screen and kind of go through the brochure that I went over at the conference.
And maybe for everyone, maybe give a little short background on the conference itself and what that was like as a undergrad to go to that conference and what your experience was, because I think that's maybe not, I don't know if it's unique that nobody's gone to a conference, but APHA is a big conference, like a very different experience.
Yeah, it was a lot bigger than I expected. But the people there, like the researchers and professors that I talked to, they were actually really excited that I was an undergraduate, and they were super, super welcoming. And I was just really I felt very welcomed, even though I kind of felt like the youngest and most unexperienced one there. So it was a great experience. But basically, we were doing a bit of research investigating reported injury rates in the United States youth labor force. And so, when you think of child labor, maybe a lot of people don't think about the US, but it's still very relevant here. Just to give a brief overview, since 2019, the number of illegally employed children has risen by 88%. 5,800 minors were found to be employed in violation of the law in 2013, and a lot of employer penalties resulted from that. And then around 160,000 children experience work-related injuries annually, and some of these injuries are severe enough that they need emergency room treatment. And so maybe you're thinking, okay, states are trying to protect children more, but not exactly. A lot of states have actually rolled back child labor laws in 2014, 2023, and I'm sure before that as well. And with the Trump administration, that is just continuing. But some examples of how laws of rollbacks are that Iowa now allows minors to work in industrial laundries, demolition, freezers, meat coolers. They also permit 14 and 15-year-olds to work up to 6 hours a day on school days. And Arkansas no longer requires work permits for 14 and 15-year-olds. So kind of rolling back hours, regulations, things like that. So our focus was to look at child labor laws by state and comparing youth injury rates across states with different levels of child labor protections. So for example, New York is not going to have the same child labor law protectiveness as, let's say, Florida or something. And we thought that because of that difference in child law protectiveness, maybe there's also a difference in youth injury rates across those states. And then we also examined whether higher or lower child labor law protections align with youth injury rates across different industries like meatpacking, as well as subcategories. So we created a child labor law rating based on some regulations that states had. For each state, we looked at employment certificates, age certification, whether they regulate employment of minors in the entertainment and agriculture industry, as well as kind of the max hours that minors can work. This includes on weekend, school days, things like that. And then we gave each state a rating of A, B, or C, A being the highest. For our injury data, we use non-fatal occupational injury data provided by the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we focus on the youngest available age group since we're focusing on youth, as well as private industry. And I think that was just because that was the most readily available data to us. Our main analyses included whether injury rates vary significantly among states with different child labor law ratings. So, you know, is a state with an A rating going to have maybe lower injury rates than a state with a C rating? That's kind of what we expected. And then we also analyzed whether injury rates vary across states by industry, population size, population of foreign-born children, as well as income inequality. And so these were some of our results. This is just a map of the states and kind of their ratings. So not a lot of states with green ratings, a lot of yellow and red, just not the best. But for results, we had a lot of we found a lot of unexpected trends actually. So for leading meatpacking states, they generally reported lower injury rates than states with fewer facilities. And then there were actually no top meatpacking states with the highest protectiveness rating compared to B and C states. And then among those B and C states, top meatpacking states actually reported lower injury rates. When we also looked at the top meatpacking states with a higher percentage of foreign-born children, since a lot of, child laborers in meatpacking states are probably foreign-born, there was actually lower reported injury rate compared to other state combinations. It was also interesting that states with smaller populations reported more injuries. And then if we take a look over here, states with a higher percentage of foreign-born children than the US average reported significantly higher injury rates. And that was kind of one of the trends that we did expect, but most of them were not exactly what we expected. We also looked at income inequality. So states with more equal income distribution reported significantly higher injury rates. And this was also true when we looked at A-rated states versus B and C-rated states. I know this is probably a little confusing the first time you hear it. So we can also go over that if you have any questions. But we had a lot of unexpected correlations between higher child labor law ratings and reported injury rates. And we thought that this highlighted some important unobserved contributing factors, because the reality is that there is substantial underreporting of workplace injuries. I think one paper that I read for some industries, it estimated an underreporting of like 80-something%, something really big. And so this already existing underreporting is probably more exacerbated for youth workers, especially for migrants and illegally employed children. Something I also want to note is that the database that we use, BLS, it was also missing a lot of data. It's not always the most reliable. We didn't have everything that we would have liked to work with. So even the data set itself is incomplete. So it's kind of difficult to get a very complete picture of the trends that we were looking for. But this is kind of emerging research with like what we could work with. And, obviously limitations include that states don't have comprehensive injury data. Illegal workers are missing from government surveys, and there's a lot of injury underreporting across injuries. And so some of the future directions that we thought of then was refining the labor law rating system, looking at more socioeconomic factors, maybe looking at more industries, looking at recent policy changes, and things like that. Yeah, so that was kind of the presentation that I gave. It was a roundtable presentation, which is different from oral or poster presentations. But you basically just sit at a table with other presenters and attendees at the conference, and you present your work, and then you have like a discussion with them. So it's very kind of conversational style of presenting.
So can you explain a little bit more Gini coefficient and then how does it play in this research? And also I'd like to ask that what kind of people was there, because that we met CDC and NIH and then Rutgers professor from medical school, and then what kind of interaction with them, and then yeah, that's I would like to learn more.
Yeah, so the Gini coefficient is basically, it tells you like whether the income distribution is equal or not. Usually you want it, you want it to be more equal. And if it's more equal, then workers are probably not being exploited as much. They're not having a lot of like minimum wage or lower than minimum wage jobs, things like that. And so we did expect that states with more equal income distribution would actually have lower injury rates, but we saw the opposite. And then as for the other like people that I met at the conference, there were a lot of different types of people doing work in specific areas, like the CDC, like Daisy mentioned. There was also a professor working at Rutgers, and he has a lot of research with like child labor or kind of like education as well, child labor and education. And there were several directors of like certain child labor or child labor law like related organizations. And so some of them were more policy focused, some of them were more kind of statistically focused. But they brought a lot of kind of different perspectives to our research.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So you talk about injury rates.
Mhm.
Have you thought about filtering the data based on the type of injury, or was this filtered injuries in the first place? Because the degree of injury is kind of important, right? So like understanding where the underreporting is coming from, like it might be like if you're like from a lower income bracket, you might be less inclined to good get help, medical help if you're injured, your injury is just less severe, right? So but being the injury being less severe doesn't make it like less significant as just a data. So like I was wondering if the data set considered the types of injuries that the
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point. From what I remember, I don't think we distinguish between the different types of injuries, but we also did take a look at fatality numbers a little bit, and they did show, from what I remember, kind of similar underreporting issues. So I think we didn't use the fatality numbers because there weren't a lot of fatalities, and the majority of injuries are not fatal, and so that's what we focused on. But I think if we look at kind of the severity of injuries, maybe that'll show a different important picture as well. Like maybe it'll like these trends will be different for minor injuries compared to major injuries, things like that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, and I think it's true. I'm not sure to what degree, there was a paper we looked at one point about the underreporting in Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers in injury and illnesses, which are basically underreporting to OSHA. And I don't remember if they talked about a differential reporting bias when it was more severe or less. Obviously, if it's a more severe injury, they have less sort of leeway to not report it. If somebody's had an amputation, then that's hard to ignore. Whereas a lot of musculoskeletal injuries can be ignored or treated off-site. So I think that's really interesting. And I think maybe we should put it in the to be discussed if we want to go back and grab that data and filter it. And if it's that easy to do, that's the other part that may or may not be. For some reason, the word is escaping me, but a dimension that is easy to pull out. Like sometimes we could do it and sometimes we couldn't, and it's obviously stored in a giant relational database somewhere, and we're only allowed certain relationships. So, and I'm sure as an information data scientist, you are well aware of that. So yeah, I think that's great. That's a good observation.
So I would like to add one thing that I've been participating in several this conference is huge. But last year, the 2024, we went to the Minneapolis. It's huge. It's like double. It's always huge. This is international and very famous, and all the professor and that we are presented together with PhD or doctors, professor, all together. It's really hard to find at high school is no way we are the first one is undergraduate is a very small portion. But what I noticed last year is like, all the school from Harvard to all the school was there participated and not only one desk, it's like a huge, the desk they have and they just promote a lot. Right, Hallie? It was really, really stunned to see all right? Very big promotion from all the school participated there.
Yeah, they had a lot of different stations, like by the research. Yeah, it was really big.
Yeah, so I realized that all the school, it's of course it's after COVID, put a lot of effort to increase the students or what is attention and the more research and more kind of put into that effort to public health to promote to general and then research aspects. So I think it's good and in getting bigger and bigger. So that's what I was really stunned to see last year.
Yeah, and within the world of conferences, it is a huge conference. Like it's not just there are a couple of conferences that are really big like that. I think the American Thoracic Society is another huge conference. And there's some that are outside of the health world, obviously. The American Geographers Union is another really big one. And then my own professional conference, the American Industrial Hygienists Association annual conference is enormous, also like 9,000 people or something. And it's because I think in all of these cases, they're a combination of academics, government people, and practitioners. And so you get this, and students, and it's a really great mix of sort of cross discipline stuff, like what you guys experienced yourselves, that you guys got to meet people from many different perspectives. And I think that's super valuable. I'm sure it's possible to share that.
Yeah, so Hallie, can you put it in that materials or shareable
Oh,
things?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, week one that you can put it in that everybody can see.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, so this is very interesting. Public health itself is very interdisciplinary and very multidisciplinary. When you see, of course, it's our research is all different, data science and real hard science and also law and engineering and math and then public policy. It's very multidisciplinary approach, which is very happy and then proud. And then when we go to a conference, you can see that policymaker and then educators and medical people and the school, the huge school, everybody there. You can name it, like every school was participated and then promote. So that's one of the things is that really, really we can learn a lot through interdisciplinary, how to collaborate it and then try to create a solution or tackle to solve a creative way, collaborative way.
Yeah, I think also kind of another thing that I guess like was reminded of at the conference is how many like little areas of public health there are. Like even my roundtable section, like it was just about like it was just data in the workplace. But even that was kind of its own thing, and there's like so many different types of research. So I think there's gonna be something that people are interested in within public health. It's just really, really big. So hopefully we'll be able to find something that everyone's interested in.
Yeah, so hopefully this year's research, somebody else go there present. So you guys have the same experience, will be very different.
But
So anyone wants to present and yeah, tell me that we'll and tell Dr. Knows and then we'll see. But yeah, it will be so fun and then we'll be different. Hallie told me that before conference and after conference is really different. It's opened a lot of kind of a perspective, right, Hallie?
yeah, like you just really get a better idea of the scope of things, and everything feels very, very interconnected. And I couldn't stay at that presentation or at that conference as long as I would have liked to because of like school, but I'll be able to be there for longer this year. So I want to explore a little bit more. Jin, you were able to share kind of what we've been working on a little bit after that.
Yeah, so I can get started on this year's or what the first half of what Dr. Noah mentioned on our research plate for now. Right. So I thought everyone had this abstract, but like it wasn't in the email. But it is in the research hub over here. It's currently 2026 abstract, but it's not too accurate, but like it is where it is. And I thought this would be a good place to just hit it off. So our abstract was admitted or accepted into the APHA annual meeting for 2025, as Dr. Nath mentioned. So our topic was looking at more specifically foreign-born workers and fatalities, occupational fatalities instead of non-fatal injuries like last year. So as like a quick background, I just say like some states obviously have really high fatality rates, some don't. And we were investigating into foreign-born workers and looking through the states to see if that might have some connection or ties or a possible explanation into getting a better understanding of how fatal injury rates are reported or how they come to be. So last, like most publicly available data about the workplace, we got our data from the BLS. And where our time range is between 28 to 2023. And we looked at some variables and some variables that are not mentioned in the abstract, and I'll get into more later as I show you guys like more of the behind the scenes. But for now, yeah, we're looking at average fatal injury counts or just it depends. But yeah, we're looking for foreign-born workers in the labor force specifically, and we were looking at some other variables like their education levels, English proficiency, wage policies, worker protection policies, Those we got from some nonprofit organization called Oxfam. They have this annual index that ranks states from best and worst on-site policies. And for statistical analysis, we didn't go too fancy and we stuck to our two-tailed t-test and some Pearson correlation. Well, we looked at a lot of other things, like this is what it boils down to for now. We're looking to kind of go a bit more in depth on other things that I'll mention later. But yeah, there was a notably higher percentage of foreign-born workers in the labor force and states with higher fatality rates. They also had higher percentages of both lower educated and higher educated foreign-born workers, but there were no significant differences regarding English proficiency. So like for this, we could kind of think of in ways like maybe we don't want to look at English proficiency, but like something related in that general area to see. And we also looked at again, we looked at the policies, but they didn't come out statistically significant. I feel like the conclusion will eventually. I'll have to read this abstract, so I'll just leave it there for now. Um, so what we've done so far is this, and we did everything through. Oh, I can't see it. We did everything through spreadsheets. It's it's kind of a mess. So I'll show you like the key points. So this ranks page, it has all our overall data that you could be accumulated or aggregated from BLS and various other places we hunted down. There we currently have them all by the big filter is our total fatal injuries rate, and also you can find this spreadsheet here in our 2025 APH research. It should be this one, occupational fatalities by state. If people want to take a further look into it, whatever. But yeah, we have data. We got data on said things. Fatal injury rates, the policy scores from Oxfam, percent foreign born in labor force, education, language, English proficiency. And we did look at other things, but this is what kind of stuck. And we just basically, for stats wise, you wanna look at this down here. That's where we got our results for our abstract. This was again just a quick t-test. What we did was we looked at the 10 lowest fatality rates, states with the 10 lowest and states with 10 highest, and ran a t-test on them. These are their aggregated numbers, and these go with what's said in the abstract here. We also, in an attempt to try to get a further understanding, we try making graphs and things, but nothing's too set in stone yet. Yeah, we're trying to look into relative or have fatal injury rates per 100K. And as Marie mentioned, we do have exposures data, but like one limitation that came with this is we know there's underreporting in the first place, but the states like reported injury or fatal injury rates don't align with like the exposures. So like there's even less data in a lot of the states in regards to fatal injury rates compared to what they've said and like the further details that they're giving us. So that's just like another thing I want to mention. This is just again just the collection of our Oxfam data, and it goes. I can't see. Yeah, Oxfam data, foreign-born population. So, and another thing that we ran into was we're missing off some states. It's not, again, states data problems all around. And 2020 was an odd date for getting population data on the foreign-born because it was just COVID, and I think that was part of why we're missing the entire year of 2020. But oh, yeah, that's just the tabs kind of explain everything. We looked at Sophie actually looked at industries, but yeah, we looked into there's some things we want to look into, like industries, race, by population, by certain demographics. But again, we were like very limited in trying to find data that we could use to support or even try to investigate into these variables or factors. But yeah, that's kind of like how we are. We just aggregated data. Data mining was like one of the hardest aspects this time around. Stats wise, we didn't do anything fancy. We just did some t-tests. The Pearson correlations, I think we held up on because we didn't get anything too significant or anything we tuned. Can't. Yeah, this is old things. It's outdated. This is also outdated. We need to fix that. But the ranks tab is where all our overall data is. You can again just filter these by, well, we don't want alphabetically. Well, you can filter them by injury rate or whatever to get like better understanding of things. But on top, yeah, that's it for what we have so far. This is also good. And we mentioned that we want to look further into like, or go a little more in depth for this 2025 abstract we got submitted. And three things came up, and we were hoping to possibly look into workplace friendliness. So we want to see if like a lot of workplaces there's a lot of illegal immigrants or possibly just like certain demographics that are there that are not proficient in English. So we're thinking we could use this as a factor of looking into states. We were also looking at OSHA plans. We were hoping that we could maybe got some data from which states follow and have their own policies for workers. And there's also data enforcement here, but we could look at from wage and hour compliance or like our EFSA enforcement data for violations. So this is a violations data, but we were also thinking maybe we could look into these as covariates by state, which we can, thankfully. But like these three were what we were hoping to look at, going further to possibly enrich our current abstract that we have here for this year. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I didn't want to go too in depth. Oh, I forgot to mention like the sources where we got these data should be here on each respective pages. So there's that, but if anyone has like questions or want to like discuss some further things about data, they can always like, I guess, message me because you all have the numbers or email me or get me somehow. But yes, that's it for now. I don't know how more in depth I should go.
Can you show us a graph which states? Yeah, I saw the graph.
Oh, you want this graph? It's
No,
not
no, it's like a state by state comparison.
on. We have a candlestick or a box plot of fatal injuries per 100,000. But honestly, I think it's like better to all right, there's this state. If we want to look at fatal injuries, this is probably easier. It's a heat map. We could make it better by doing it by per 100,000. But we don't have too many graphs that I want to like really share. But we can see on Mississippi. Oh no.
At the the right hand side, the graph, and the Dr. No said it really show go down at the end that all
This one?
that one that we complete to kind of show that what's the result. The one of the things that you may know later that it's really hard to find the right, there are not that many previous research or nobody really put together all this. So whatever they're organize all this, the data together, Dr. knows that it's very good, right? You said that.
I did say that.
Yeah, so this is kind of all sums up that we found out through this data analysis.
Yeah, not it has the big ones. We got the Oxfam scores in their index. For the Oxfam, we what we did ended up doing because they have annual index, we ended up averaging them out to get these for wage dimension and worker protection. Again, so these bars are going to be our fatal injury rates per 100,000. And the green shows our percent foreign born in labor force. Interestingly, you can see there's like some increase in percent foreign born in labor force as the fatal injury rates decrease. But also there's no specific like trend that stands out. I think it's pretty interesting how there's just like a dip in everything kind of here. But again, I didn't pay this chart too much attention when I was rushing out, but
Well, and I think it's an interesting point that Marie brought up the previous time. Like, if we were to do the same chart, looking at instead of and this I'm not sure we can do, so this is one of those things you guys could look into, would be if you could do this by severe injury and then, minor injury or something like that, like, would you see a similar rate? And those were rates, right?
oh yeah, these are per 100,000, but we we don't have per 100,000, but also we would have to recalculate everything. I don't think it'll be a
Well,
big
that one's per
problem.
100,000 overall fatality injury rate per 100,000, and all the injuries are per 100,000. So we might be able to see if that differs, and that would get at the question of how much sort of underreporting, because you can't really underreport a death. That one is really hard to avoid. But they can avoid them in other ways. Like, I'm not sure, for example, I'm sure you guys have heard about the ICE raid in California on the cannabis farm that happened. I think it happened last week, and the one of the workers fled, and he ended up dying. And so it's like, how was that characterized and captured, and how will it be in BLS? Like, is it not going to be captured? Is it going to be, you know? So I think that you can decide not to include even a death if you're, how to say it correctly, if you're both clever and motivated to find a way out of reporting it.
Wouldn't that be part of ICE detainee fatalities reporting? Because the ICE has a fatality reporting going on, right?
It might be, but I think that's one of those cases where, like, what, would they
They might just not report it, period.
Right. Well, I could see how they might decide it was, I don't know what, but like, I think that's where it gets complex, but I think that that's the rare case, I hope. I think we don't know for sure, but there's a guy that puts out a blog, and he used to be in charge of the Maryland OSHA. His name's Jordan Barab, I believe is his name, and he puts out this incredibly depressing newsletter and blog. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, called Confined Space. I'll share the link. And every week, and I actually finally unsubscribed because I was like, okay, I don't know what good this is doing me, and it's just depressing. He sends out an email that's like death on the job, and it's just like a list of news stories of people dying on the job, and it's overwhelming after a while, and it's an interesting but it'd be interesting to like look at these kind of, with fatalities, you could match them to news stories, and do sort of a checking to make sure things are in the database correctly because it's small enough. But when it comes to injuries, it's nearly impossible to do any sort of fact checking of these databases. But you could look and see if, as the injury becomes less reportable, so to speak, do you see a change in the pattern between the different states? And so if you did see a change in the pattern, like, what would tell you the change that would indicate that states with better laws were doing less underreporting. Can anybody parse that out? What I what?
Can
Tucker,
you
can
say
you
that again?
repeat that?
Yeah, I can say it again. Let me try and say it slightly differently, which is if you had the data on um, fatalities on the job, severe, moderate, and mild injuries, let's say, what would the trend, and then you had states where you had more laws about to protect children and less laws. We'll say it's in the, or you had high foreign born or low foreign born, either one, because we're seeing sort of a counterfactual or an unexpected relationship there, right? So like if you had those four types of events, what trend would you expect to see across those four events? So fatalities, serious injuries, moderate injuries, mild injuries. What change would you expect or not to see in the places that had underreporting?
I mean, if it's underreported, then the rates would be, they should be lower in general, right? Like, uh, I mean, like it depends on, I think it depends on like how the baseline rates come out as, because if the baseline, like the clearly the if there are restrictions, then the baseline rates should be on the lower side, right? But then if there's underreporting, then it uh either the rates would be even lower or it'll be around the same, right? Because they're trying to argue in a sense that um these laborers do not need more protections. So
What
I
what do
think
you
that
guys
might be
think?
how it goes. But I don't know. I don't know.
No, I
I,
think I
I
think
also, yeah, I also think maybe since, like you said, fatalities are harder to kind of sweep under the rug when you report them, maybe the states that have less protections would still have kind of higher fatalities, but that trend um, wouldn't hold for kind of the more minor injuries. Like maybe there's like less than you would expect or something.
I
I mean I think
mean,
you're both. Oh yeah,
well, if
go
they're
ahead.
undocumented workers, then isn't there a high chance that they might not just report the fatality at all? So like you
I
would
don't
see
know.
there'll be I feel like they might not actually report that that fatality as like an occupational fatality. They might just say something like a cause of death is unknown, right? Because like
Could be,
burying
yeah.
someone isn't illegal, even if they're undocumented. So like undocumented immigrants are often just buried at just regular cemeteries, right? But there'll be like some uh odd ratio of undocumented fatalities maybe, or like if the fatalities aren't being reported, then the number of fatalities wouldn't add up. Something like that would happen, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you both are thinking about it and have identified different sort of parts of the issue. Like Marie, you were saying that one of the big pieces is what are we comparing it to? And I think that, and then Haley, you brought in like we compare between the states. Like so you don't have like a baseline, a real baseline, right? We don't know reality. And so we can't, we can make an assumption about what reality might be. We could take it from somewhere else. We could but like it's going to vary, right? Because it's not going to be in the same population at the same time. Like we could take fatality rates. I think we discussed this a little bit last week in our leadership meeting. Like, could we look at rates from the Scandinavian countries where they keep like 100% records of everything? Like that would be interesting because it would be comparable in one sense, like if somebody were working in an aluminum smelter in both places, then that would give you some information. But it's not the same people that are working. It's not the same populations. It's not the same ages. It's not the same training and background. And so I think that like knowing what that baseline is tough, and that maybe the solution is to compare between. And so then you could say like, well, Tennessee was really low for fatalities, and California was also low. You know, you might see some of this stuff, you might see in the relationship moving around. And so then your fixed piece is what the relationship is between the more restricted areas and the less restricted areas as far as like laws and protections. So I think it's hard, I think is the short version, but it still could be really interesting to look at that relationship and see if it changes. And it would like, there's multiple ways to do it. If we had the data, you could just plot it, right? And look at it and then go from there, which is the glory of plotting things. Um, and then your question and comment about undocumented laborers not reported as occupational deaths is an interesting one, Marie, and I have no idea is actually the sort of top level. I do know that, you know, we've put out at Cal OSHA a bunch of statements that not recently, because of ICE and because of what's been going on, that none of our regulations are changed remotely by somebody's status as an immigrant or not, as a legal worker or an illegal worker. Like they apply across the board. And I mean, we're in California where terrible things happen too, but that's sort of the perspective that California state takes. But if you're in a state like Arizona that doesn't have a state plan, then they're just doing whatever OSHA is doing. And I don't know that OSHA has ever said anything of the sort. They might have. I mean, they've gone through a lot of different, obviously, administrations since 1970, but I think that the undocumented laborers dying on the job and not getting reported as an occupational death is more of a local cultural question than like really a state, um, yeah, a state value. So just depends. So I think that's interesting, and I think it's a good thing to keep in mind. You guys can check it out and see if it's easy to do that. It could be a dimension to add to the foreign-born analysis of um, do we see the same trend regardless of how severe the health outcome is? Okay, that was great. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the work that Haley and Jin presented?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Mhm.
I think I just got a little bit confused after that whole side note. But are we comparing the foreign workers or the fatalities to that to just all workers in general, or are we just comparing them by state by state? If that makes sense.
Like
Mhm.
right now, we're just doing state by state, I believe.
Okay.
We
They
compare
had
it
done,
to,
yeah, go ahead, Jin, sorry.
oh no, so it's just like we did top 10 versus bottom 10 of fatal injury rates, and then compared, and then filtered them by, let me bring this up real quick.
I know that while she's looking for that, I'll say that we definitely looked at that, whether or not we included it in our sort of final cut. I cannot remember, but that's an interesting baseline, right? Is all the general population versus individual smaller populations is
Or
definitely
not
something
only
that's.
just the general population, but also I think like the youth workers
Mhm,
that are not foreign born,
mhm.
I think is also a really important part to
Well,
look into
youth
because
and foreign born proved impossible. So we don't have any
okay,
youth and foreign born. That was one of and that was mostly a numbers question. It just got too small. Um,
gotcha.
I think we were able to do that to pull them out, but then they were just so tiny, the numbers which is a different problem, if those numbers really are tiny, but they were tiny enough, especially in fatalities, thankfully, that because most of the time when a child dies on the job, it's reported. I mean, and it's reported widely, right? I mean, that was part of the sort of homework prep work you guys did. So I think that was thankfully why we couldn't do both of those things.
Thank
Small
you.
mercies. Go ahead, Jen, if you found the answer.
Oh, oh yeah, okay, no, so we did just compare top 10 and bottom 10, and then we look for if there was significant difference in like the foreign-born population among those states. That was just like another like one variable we looked at. So it wasn't all. So yes, we're doing comparisons on like other demographics too, not just foreign-born. Also, I had a quick question. Could we do like case studies on a state? Because like I find it hard to believe like one state was a powerhouse in one industry, especially if it was like I forget what state was a powerhouse in the meatpacking, but like they weren't meatpacking powerhouses constantly, right? So we could possibly look at a before and after would that still be comparing apples to apples, or would that be apples to oranges comparison? I feel like that would be an interesting way to look at one.
I'll let someone else. Marie looks like she has a thought, but I will just say that like some places have been meatpacking powerhouses forever and ever and ever, and so like not all states would work that way. But I think so. You think you'd have to do a little bit of history of the workplace, which is always interesting. But like Chicago has always been a meatpacking since meatpacking became an industrialized thing. So like you couldn't really look at Illinois, but like maybe like Nebraska has a lot of meat packing. Maryland even has some meat packing. So like I think you could maybe, and I'll let somebody else weigh in on what they think about an apples to apples or apples to oranges kind of analysis. I guess the other question is what's the before and after? Oh, good. Marie, go ahead.
So I think it's an interesting perspective, especially because I was looking at some articles and it said it like some of them listed specific corporations that were
Mm-hmm.
using a higher percentage of child laborers. And so clearly legal restrictions are based on lobbying. And so it's likely that meatpacking powerhouses probably have some sway over it. But I do agree that meatpacking and like the meatpacking industry is very it's a blue ocean industry, right? So like there
Oh my
probably
God,
has
what
to be
does that
much
mean?
change
What is the
in
blue ocean industry?
oh no, sorry. Red ocean, sorry.
I don't know
Um
what that means either.
okay, so like uh it's
Sorry.
saturated. It's a saturated industry.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I do nothing with corporate stuff
Yeah, I don't know.
except for now I try and regulate it. But other than that, okay, red ocean,
So
blue
it's
ocean.
a very
Okay,
saturated industry and it's always been kind of saturated, right? So like
yeah.
the the corporations probably haven't like changed that much in general. But I think it's a very interesting idea, a perspective.
Then maybe we can look at branches then, because they probably have a main headquarters of
Oh yeah,
said
yeah.
industries, and we could and like pretty sure we could find data down to the zip code or counties. So
Uh-huh.
like that is just all right. I'm just throwing things out there, but it'll be
Well,
interesting to look
usually
at.
if you think of it from like a corporation level, right? Then like headquarters is probably like office level workers, right?
Yes, I
They're
meant
gonna
more
have
like
like separate factories and factory managers who are like working at those factories. So it depends on where you put the factory. And I feel like it's like the factories are probably I don't know. I feel like they would be like kind of grouped together in like one area, but I don't
Well,
know if
I could
that's
tell
like
you a
true.
lot about chicken factories because I did 2 years. Everybody who was here last year got probably to help me process my little t trauma of having to be involved in this study, although it was a fascinating study. And um, unfortunately, so we were looking at whether the increase in line speed of eviscerating chickens was related to worker injury. And we produced a report, and the report went in on January 7th this year. And you could imagine that nothing has happened and nothing ever will from our, well, maybe something will, but our report, we were very careful because we knew what was coming. And so we only made statements that could be absolutely 100% factually shown by our data. Like there was no like taking a trip down the experimental thought lane. Like it was just, we saw this means this. We saw this means this.
Yeah.
It was very, but what I can tell you about the way that these corporations are organized, you're right that it is a red ocean. They are very competitive and it's very crowded, and this maybe speaks to why we're seeing illegal labor practices in it. The profit margins are tiny. They're just tiny, tiny profit margins. And the difference between Purdue and, um,
Tyson.
Tyson are just tiny, and they're paranoid as hell about like giving anything away. And there's all sorts of antitrust stuff. Like they can't, they say, gather in a room and discuss safety because that's against, like, you can't have a certain number of them. And they were just found, I don't know who it was, but it was some of the big players were found guilty a few years ago or accused of like price fixing, right? So like we know it's not like in the past, it's what like thing, but those aren't the safety people, right? So interesting part, and maybe relevant or not to the idea that Jin raised, is that the way they're organized is that they do have a corporate headquarters, and it's in one place. And then they've got at each facility, at each plant, there's sort of two populations of people. And this was in the killing and post processing, so not in like the egg houses or the chicken farms. So this was only in the processing plants after you see the chickens going down the highway in the truck. Like, so when they get there, and often they are grouped together because then you save money on transportation. You don't lose as many chickens to dying because it's cold, on the truck and stuff like that. And so North Carolina is a huge focal point, and Georgia and probably South Carolina as well. So when you get there, though, there's a split, and there's basically operations management, and those are mostly office workers, and then there's the team members. It's a very lovely term. All the people that work on the floor. And so it's not it is both, it's clear cut in what they do, but those populations may change over time. Like somebody who starts as like a breast puller or whatever can move up to like a supervisor and can eventually be something in operations. And the people in operations occasionally go to corporate. And there's sort of three levels. There's like floor workers, administrative at an operations level and at one location, and then there's corporate. And so you could look at multi-state corporations, but you also could look at vertical integration, and how many of these places have full, chicken, egg to, meat kind of service. Some of them do and some of them don't. And they've integrated over time as well. Like JBS bought like the egg people. I don't remember what they were called, but like one of the places, I think it was JBS, but JBS is a huge Brazilian meat packing company, and they own a bunch of stuff in the US. So there's all sorts of complexity in meat packing, and I think that beef and pork are just as diverse, but they're not quite as dynamic, which is a hilarious term to me. But all these people consider themselves to be working in the protein industry. It's gross. But like, and you go on their LinkedIn's and they'll be like, so many years in protein. It's a whole thing. And so working in like cattle protein, like beef, is just way different because it's way more dangerous. And I think that the deaths that are happening, and this may be, I want to take a break and get some water, but this may be where we sort of shift and talk about the stuff you guys read and the articles you pulled out, and we could do a little bit of that. So why don't we take like less than 5 minutes? Like if you want to go grab a glass of water or go to the bathroom or stand up and stretch, but this is not like extended break time, because we're going to stop at 6 or whatever time that is for you.
And I just can't help but feel very grateful that I didn't have the opportunity to have to do that, to be forced to work and try to make ends meet for my family.
I like how you say that. That I didn't have that opportunity. Yeah, I mean, it's true. And it is heartbreaking. You guys are all that age, right? Or very much closer to it than I am. I have kids that are now 15 and 18, but when we first started reading this article, they were 2 years younger, so 13 and 16. So right in there with like all these ages. It's very, even those of us further away, you remember what it was like to be that age, not the age that you'd want to be getting up before dawn and trying to find work and all the hustle, not to mention all the horrors, but even the parts that are easier to imagine are sort of repulsive. Anyone else want to offer? Thank you, Ryan, for getting us started. Does anyone else want to offer sort of their initial thoughts or surprising anything?
I was really shocked at the complexity of the relationships between the people involved, like not only the child workers, but also the people that permit them to work in those industries. Because I guess I didn't really realize how difficult it could be, because you also have that moral dilemma of like, I don't want to let these children work in this industry, but I kind of have to because what else can I do for them? Um, so it's really like a difficult decision of like, what can I possibly do for them in like this position? And also, if you just cut them from their jobs, then they really have nowhere else to go. So like from the point of view of like some employers, it's um sort of in a really formal way, like better to let them work because it enables them to make a living and survive.
Right. It's not a very easy ethical question. And I imagine that the parents, if they know, sort of as Ryan pointed out, some parents may not know how bad it is. Some parents may know, but don't know what else, if someone so and so is not working at nights at the chicken factory, then they won't have a place to stay and they won't be able to send any money home. And there's all these sort of follow-on consequences. Yeah. And I remember being struck particularly in the kids on the night shift article by the teachers in the school, like there was not even somebody to report the problem to. And they all like it was yeah, the system is very complex. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
For me, it was really surprising that like the regulations are not strong enough because like for me, like when I think of some kind of an accident, there was like always some kind of an action. So like let's say there was a car accident nearby the street, then the government would like set a speed limit to minimize those kind of like possibilities of the incidents. But like when I think of these child labor cases, like there are not like enough regulations or laws that kind of prevent that can kind of prevent like these kind of accidents. So like it literally just happening again and again and again. So it's really shocking and like because it's also related to like young children and like some migrants, I think we really need some kind of like a strict law or like regulations that can really handle and solve this problem.
Yep, there's definitely that. And I will say now that I'm in the business of writing those laws, the key part that's maybe a theme we can return to, since you guys may have encountering this over the course of this, is that it enough to have a law. How do you enforce it? I would say that on many of the books, there are good enough laws, but nobody's enforcing them. And so I think that that's a question of how do you write a law that is self-enforcing, so to speak, like if you can't, if you know that OSHA's not going to come out and do a visit, and if you know that nobody's going to get audited, how can you protect these kids otherwise? So it's like a different sort of problem, and even protecting them legally through governmental regulations. And yeah, so that is an interesting point, is like how can we protect them with better laws, and what does it mean to be a better law?
And just to tag off that, I think a lot of some of the readings that I was doing kind of talked about a lot of compensation post injury or post death. And so I think there are a lot of things that like OSHA and other companies can do after the injuries, but I think there needs to be a lot more focus on preventative measures to make sure that it doesn't happen in the first place.
Right. And I think that some of the preventative measures also, especially with these cleaning deaths with children in the slaughterhouse, the preventative piece is where they're not allowed to work there. Like that's because there's nothing about that kind of a job that's safe for children. And it's not that children aren't large enough or strong enough. It's that they're not mentally prepared to do such a job. And it's a complex thing where they can do the training that's required to do that job, but because they're kids, they won't, and then additionally, because they're not necessarily in the best case scenario for them, right? They're not like performing at their best. It's nighttime. they're in a foreign country, all of this, right? Like you can provide that training that's supposed to be preventative, but it doesn't work. And that's why it's illegal also for these kids to work there. So it's an interesting problem that, yeah, but I agree that the preventative end is where we want to target. Because again, the law, even if, cannot be enforced. There aren't enough people to enforce those laws and check every slaughterhouse every night or even once a month, like once a year. It's too much. Yeah.
Would it be invasive to have AI
Hmm.
start enforcing? Because they don't sleep. But would it be invasive to ask workplaces to have cameras or things overlooking workers?
Well, what do you think? Do you think that workplaces already have cameras overlooking workers?
Right. Yes, I guess they do. I think they do for
I
most
think a lot of
places.
workplaces do. And there is monitoring with AI that they do. It's a tough one. Does anyone want to offer any thoughts? I think there's different questions. There's invasiveness and there's also effectiveness. I mean, like there's AI is nothing but and I know that you guys may feel differently about this, but to me, AI is nothing but a collection of programs written by humans. And so they're only as good as how they've been written. And they're only as good as like if an AI is like, hey, there's all these violations, if there's no person to receive the hey, there's all these violations, then it's irrelevant, right? So it's like it's a but I don't know. What do you guys think? AI in occupational health surveillance.
I just when you say that, I think of like a lot of the Amazon warehouses. I think they've been rolling out a lot of like AI monitoring the workers there, and it's just like it's kind of brutal, or it creates more brutal conditions for the workers, as in like they can't be not working for more than 5 minutes, or else they get flagged, and then they get their paycheck docked, and it's just I think that could lead to lot more issues than there already is at the moment. So
Right. So far, AI is being used to monitor productivity in the workplace
But
and safety of the product.
my counter would be they're already there.
They're already there. You could just install like another script to try and do it. But I guess then the question is, what do you do? What do you install for the AI? Like, what's it watching for?
Uh, I think there's
facial
an
recognition.
argument to be made about privacy.
Hmm.
There's AI surveillance over workers. I mean, there's already there's already privacy arguments for having your camera out in front of a car. Having AI surveilling workers is definitely gonna have a privacy issue related to it. There's no doubt.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, and I think like the way that the workers are probably gonna see the company is something along the lines of like um uh surveillance forces them to work, and sometimes they might need some time like a break to increase productivity. And so a surveillance doesn't ultimately mean that productivity is going to be raised, right? And so that means that the surveillance is unnecessary and invades the privacy of workers. That's probably what they're going to say.
Right. And I think you have to make a very strong case that AI is going to improve worker safety. And this is what I discovered firsthand in the chicken factories, and you kind of read about in other settings, is that whenever you've got workers in a factory or a production facility or a warehouse, the product or the activity that the corporation has employed the person to do takes precedence over the person. And the AI that we see in Amazon warehouses is is just like you said, Ryan, like it's how many boxes have they lifted per hour, not like does their arm hurt and how can we tell? Like um and there are examples, I can send this as like a, if you're interested in watching it, um, of companies, particularly trucking, trying to, where the health of the worker is sort of more intrinsic to the health of the product. So, like if the worker falls asleep while driving, then the product may be destroyed, right? In process, right? If they get in a big crash. And so, and the same in mining. They have some of this in mining where they want to track the eyeballs and like how you, if your eyes are not tracking the way they should, however they've defined that, you might be getting tired. This is in trucking and mining. Um, and therefore they would flag you to take a break so that, you know, you wouldn't damage yourself or the product. So there's like sort of, but there's very little incentive for companies to protect their workers in this way. And I think just something like a chicken factory, they're seen as very disposable. The workers are. In trucking company, maybe not as much, a little bit less. But okay, that's an interesting idea to have raised, Jen. Thank you for raising it. Um, the thing that sticks with me, I'll link the video, but the thing that sticks with me about AI and trucking and the interface of AI helping with work is that the if you're like driving and the AI is in charge of your big truck, like your semi, big rig 18-wheeler thing, and you as the person have given over driving to the truck, this woman did a lot of research, has done a lot of research. The time, like if you see something happening that's you want to stop and take control back from the AI, all of the current systems, it takes 18 seconds for like you to see it, to react to it, to realize what you need to do with the AI and implement it with the AI. And so as we all know who drive, 18 seconds is forever. Like so that kind of like even if the AI can do it, can it do it well enough? And is it better actually than a human? So um, lots of great AI discussion, that's for sure, on the horizon. Probably your whole careers, you will get to discuss whether or not AI is an appropriate, participant in your work. Okay, good. Anybody else wanted to? I think we started this in like comments about the papers that we read, the two sort of news articles, not the.
I think we have brought up kind of similar points already, but I think it is kind of difficult to pinpoint like where like because you want to target the root of a problem. It's kind of hard to pinpoint like what is best to target. Because even with like Howard mentioned, like the people like someone will hire children because they feel like this is not ideal, but they are like sending money to their parents and this is like what their families are relying on. So they figure that this is like actually helpful for the child. Um, and then I think it's just very difficult because also like you get into the argument of like, oh, then should we just prevent all children from working? Like, should we just prevent more uh, like illegal migrants from working? Like, crack down on that? But industries also wouldn't like that because like all of our food is literally so dependent on them. Um, yeah, everything just depends on what the company profits off of.
It does. One of our problems there was, yeah, that all of the motivations for companies to protect workers are related not to sort of the greater good or public health or any of these kinds of things, but are just the bottom line is that um, it has to cost more to hurt your workers and or get a new worker than it does to protect your workers. And it's not always been that way. But I think that in industries that like this, that are the extremely saturated marketplaces, it's more likely to be that way. Um, okay, so I don't want to like lose track of the time and keep you guys later slash earlier. Okay, so I guess like we have the shared materials that you guys all did, and I looked to see like how much similarity there was in the articles that you found. And maybe looks like we've got Haley, yours is 2025. I think that Marie, you had some very recent ones, and Sophia, you as well. That one seems to have gotten an update. But so those of you that looked more recently, what do you think the situation is in 2025? Like, what are we seeing with youth workers and protections? What's the trend? Has anything, let's start with the positives. Like, has anything become better for youth workers? All right.
I think
Okay, good.
in a way a little bit, I would say up to the tail end of the Biden administration. Kind of what I found was that Purdue and JPS, they settled with the Labor Department and they paid a combined 8 million for their violations, which is, I'm sure it's not a lot compared to what profit they've gained from having child laborers, but like it at least put something in the public. Um, but then I've also found that, that was like, yeah, that was kind of the Biden administration at the very end, kind of doing what they could related to child protections. So
I honestly think it's gotten worse. Like the settlements, okay, like they paid money, right? But it wasn't like a significant amount of money, first off. And I feel like having paid the money, that doesn't mean that they're not going to do it again. And from what I can see, like it doesn't seem like they're gonna stop. And it's not like other than the like roofing and slaughterhouse industries, I feel like it's pretty wide like a similar situation is this situation is pretty widespread in a lot of other industries as well, because we can see from the cannabis farm incident
Mhm.
last week or something. And so uh like I don't think it's gotten that much better. Like it's still they're still being exploited. And it's like it's still the same situation. It's not like something has changed to make their um environment better or prevent them from even being there in the first place. So yeah.
I think
Any
I'm
positive?
all
Go ahead.
positives. I'll do later.
Well, I that was a rebuttal. I guess Maria, you gave the rebuttal to Haley's positive, which is okay. Um,
The only positive thing, like good change is that they might be deported to their back to country. So it's not, yeah. So that's I
yeah,
already seen a lot of them, even their high school. So I don't know if it's good or bad. It's less, community will be decreased.
I think it's a little bit like what Hayun said. Like it's just hard to ethically know what that means. Yeah, because even though Trump is now president, and even though we have this incredibly, how about unfriendly, hostile to immigrant environment, people are still coming. It still beats the alternative. And I think that's sort of surprising, but it also speaks to what conditions are at home, wherever home is. And so um, I think, okay, I'm afraid to ask for negatives. So let me think for a minute how to ask for negatives that you won't all want to weigh in immediately on all the negatives. How to do this, because I think everybody probably has a negative. Um, go for it. Let's hear that what how child labor protections have weakened and or children have been, for whatever reason, put at greater risk, whether it's through weakening of protections or something else.
Uh some of the legal protections for ages 15 through 16 in certain states like Iowa has been lessened. So like for instance, you don't need a work permit to work as a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old or what was it? I forget the other one, but it was like it was a regression in legal restrictions.
Right. I think when we started this work in 2004, maybe even 2003, a little bit, we were reading about, I think it was early 2024, like there were just different things were regressing and they weren't final yet, but now they absolutely are. Maybe they were brand new. Yeah, definitely there have been legal regressions.
Yeah, I would say also, um, like not only in the US, but Trump has cut, like apparently this news article says Trump cut 69 global programs tackling child labor and human trafficking. So he's really taking this abroad.
Yeah.
Um, in addition to deregulating like current child labor law protections in the US. And something interesting that I found was like JBS was one of the it's the number one meat packing company, and it was also involved in child labor law violations. Um, and apparently, the firm that owns them donated 5 million to Trump's inaugural committee, and then they were recently put on the New York Stock Exchange, and so they're very publicly being like financially like more in the financial spotlight as well. And so, it's just showing that like, oh, like it doesn't really matter to them, like they're not hurt by this or not affected by this. Like,
Right.
yeah.
Like sort of speaks to Marie's comment that like the penalties are not remotely large enough to make an impact. Yeah. And these guys are also, JBS and Tyson especially, have a huge controlling role that they play in the USDA and labor relations in the United States, which I think we've talked about before. But was especially noticeable during COVID and probably is going to be especially noticeable as we go through this administration. Um, so yeah, they're brazen, I think is probably the term in their behavior, and which I don't know if being brazen also it means unapologetic. I think it does, but they're definitely unapologetic and brazen about their behavior in the marketplace and to workers. I will say that one of the things that is really disheartening, I mean, it's all horrible what's going on, but one of the things that is difficult, we have these ice raids, right? And they have all sorts of impacts all over the place, and you don't really know what they are until you start, they're sort of the first level of the impact and then sort of the outward. And what we're seeing in LA, for example, with the rebuilding of the Palisades and the Eaton and the Altadena fires, is that LA workers are not showing up for trainings because they don't want to be congregated in one spot where ICE can target them. And they're even like not necessarily working, but they're basically more and more removed from any kind of outreach that might provide protective equipment or any of these kinds of things. They're just like trying to be even more invisible. And so that means that they're invisible to the help that the public health department might provide or that Cal OSHA might be able to give them, even though Cal OSHA would not, like I said, we would never cite someone because of their status, or not cite them because of their status. But it means that just like everything sort of degrades more. And I can imagine that children are even more at risk. Anything that, if you're a minor, anything that's happening to the adults you're much more susceptible, or in this case, I guess, vulnerable to that happening to you. So, so I think that is a huge negative for all these workers, is that even if they were inclined to speak up in the past at all, that inclination, I'm sure, has decreased dramatically over the last 6 months. Okay, so next steps, you guys are going to hear from Sadie tomorrow, and then I'm going to meet back with you on Wednesday. And I think at that point, we're going to, you'll have had some thoughts from Sadie, which is great. And I want you to go through, so the paper, okay, if you did the first pass, great. and now maybe go back and try reading in depth the methods. And I think the methods bring in like a lot of the supporting. Yeah, I mean, this is a paper that has 4 supporting information documents, which is pretty epic. But I think it's worth sort of slowly going through and trying to understand what they did. And that will start to, and maybe jot down for us to talk about um, what kinds of what kinds of populations you think would be relevant for which of these 3 sort of priorities that they put in the paper. They had for workers, for consumers, and for the general population. And so think about which in those 3 you're interested in thinking about and looking into, and then how easy that would be to characterize who they are. How many people, like if it's like shampoo and conditioner or something, like how easy is it for you to characterize how many people use it and how would you do it? So pick like a higher priority chemical and sort of go through the thought process of how would you bring in population information. So I guess to pick a high priority chemical, you'll have to look at the results, but think more about the methods and how we might develop our methods to do a value added to this that would be really a significant value. And what those populations are. Today's Monday, Wednesday. On Wednesday, we will meet and sort of do a close reading together of the paper. Discuss what you guys found and what you think of it, and then we'll sort of start to narrow in on what we want to focus on. And then on Thursday, you'll have 2 more hours with Sadie, and then on Friday, I am busy, but we will maybe have some research for, maybe from our discussion on Wednesday, you'll be able to start looking and compiling some data, and or Jin and Haley, you guys, we could work on fleshing out the 2005 data if we wanted to look at those, if we looked at those 4 different levels of injury and illness, would that make a difference? So we can sort of resolve that towards the end on Wednesday, what you guys will do on Friday.
So just to clarify, for the paper, we're looking at the results, methods and results, and kind of seeing like how easy would it be to categorize like how many people are being exposed to certain chemicals. Is that right?
Yeah, think about that and how you would approach the problem of adding in a population and what you sort of personally are drawn to doing. I don't know, I can't say that we will do the thing that each of you is personally drawn to, because you may each be drawn to something different. But sometimes in research, you can choose the thing that you think is the most important or that feels the most resonant for you, and other times you can't because there's no data, or it just is if you were most excited about a exposure that only happens in a tiny population, maybe that's not worth years of work to protect those 4 workers, right? So sort of observe your own interest in things and what you're drawn to, and then how easy is that and how justifiable is it? It's a little bit of an ethical kind of thought, but I think that you guys will, and then we'll talk on Wednesday about what makes sense to focus on as a group and how we'll move forward. So yeah, it will be a discussion on Wednesday. And you could read the other parts of the paper if you want, but I'm just saying stick to the results, the methods, and then some of the results. The results are pretty straightforward. If you don't want to get, if you're feeling brave, you can go for it, read the whole thing. But there's a lot to it and a lot of sort of sidebars,